Welcome to Pick Your Take, the film podcast where everybody's entitled to be wrong. I'm your host, Isaac Leggett.
And I'm also your host, Chris Demoulas. This week we'll be asking our big-brained listeners to pick your take on the 2013 film, Iron Man 3. And up front, spoilers for Iron Man 3 and just probably a couple of anything in the Marvel Universe, maybe just be aware
Yeah,
we
it
might
might
be
come
talking
up,
about.
yeah.
But yeah, so do we want to get just let's get some boring deets out of the way. Let's get some details of this film.
Yeah, sure. And so this movie was released May 3rd, 2013. It was basically in the same slot the year after The Avengers, kind of right at that same time.
I think it was the next release. The start of Phase 2.
Yeah, I think maybe, it was definitely the next release after The Avengers, and it was 1 year later.
Yep.
And oddly also kind of right like the week or month that I was graduating college.
Oh, wow. Cool.
It was released by obviously Marvel Studios and Disney, but also based on from the initial Iron Man movies. It also was in association with Paramount Pictures. They were kind of still latched on to the Iron Man brand.
Yes.
It was written and directed by Shane Black. Famously, he was a screenwriter for a long time. Directed Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. We'll get into all of that. Written by Shane Black and Drew Pearce, but it was obviously based on the Marvel comics and specifically the Extremis comic series by Warren Ellis. And it stars Robert Downey Jr., Gwyneth Paltrow, Don Cheadle, Guy Pearce, Rebecca Hall, Jon Favreau, Ben Kingsley, James Badge Dale, Stephanie Shostak, William Sadler, and Paul Bettany as Jarvis. It's actually the last time we really got Paul Bettany as Jarvis for a whole movie.
Oh, that's right, because he in the second Avengers movie, which I'm forgetting the name of,
right?
Age of Ultron, because it's not an age.
Sure.
That's why I forget the name of it. But he becomes he becomes Vision. That's right.
Right. So,
and basically the basic story of this is, as Isaac kind of said, this takes place immediately after Marvel's The Avengers. Tony Stark is left traumatized by his near-death experience during those events. He saved the world and Manhattan from utter destruction, but is now plagued by nightmares and frequent anxiety attacks. So Tony focuses his stress on building many Iron Man suits, believing them to be a shield, protecting him and those he loves against the horrors of the world. But the world presents a new horror in the form of the Mandarin, an international terrorist who is seemingly responsible for numerous unusual bombings. After one of the attacks injures someone close to Tony, he embarks on a quest for vengeance and to uncover Mandarin's true identity and objective.
Ooh, spooky.
It seems every time I speak, the trash man comes along and is taking out the trash as I'm speaking, so it's going to be hysterical too. Maybe I'll go back and
that adds tension. It builds it up. It's nice. It adds tension.
Well, if you heard those giant banging sounds in the background, that was my trash being taken out. Do you have a first sort of like viewing experience of this movie? Did you see this in theaters?
I don't think I did. I think I saw this movie on home video sometime, autumn of 2013. Okay. Probably right after I got out to LA. We kind of both moved out in that direction around the same time.
Yeah, you're right.
And so I saw it, and admittedly, this is my take on this movie. I'm really underwhelmed by this movie. I don't really like this movie almost at all.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't seen it in a while. I've maybe seen it one time since, so this was like my third time seeing it, and I was just really disappointed by it again. I'm really, really underwhelmed by this movie. I don't think it's very good at all.
Fair point. I like it quite a bit.
What about you?
I kind of have an interesting story with this because back in after I graduated from Fairleigh Dickinson 2 years before you did, but the same school we both went to, as we mentioned on episode 1. After I graduated and I was kind of submitting my film around to festivals, I got a job working at a movie theater, and I was working for AMC in 2012. And in 2013, I was working at the theater when I saw Iron Man 3, and I loved it. I went to like a midnight screening right after a shift, so I kind of just put a sweater over my uniform and just went and watched the movie. And I really enjoy this movie, and I wanted to kind of use that as a kind of jumping off board to talk about just my sort of experience in the movie theater industry, working for movie theaters. I started off working for AMC back in 2012. In about 2014, I started working for Cinemark. And then 2016, I started working for ArcLight Cinemas, which was owned by the parent company Pacific Theatres Exhibition Corporation. God, I almost forgot the name of that company. And I wanted to bring it up because recently the company closed, and it definitely feels sort of like the end of an era. Working for a really great company that I really loved. For those of you who don't know, Pacific Theatres Exhibition Corporation, it's mostly a West Coast theater company. It only has 19 locations around the United States. And it was just really great. I loved working for them. There was a lot of like mobility within the company, and I got I had a lot of interesting positions. I worked as a bartender and as an accountant, and I had so many great experiences working for it. Saw so many movies for free, including Iron Man 3, but that was when I was working for AMC. But it feels appropriate to talk about this movie now because it brought me back to when I first started working for movie theaters, and it's really, I just kind of wanted to mention that and just shout out to anyone who worked for ArcLight Cinemas or Pacific Theatres. I loved that place, and I love all you guys. There was a real love of cinema in that building, and it was palpable. And the audience that came, the guests that came, and the people that worked there, it was present in just the way everyone talked about it. I'll miss it a lot.
Absolutely. And I also think, I'm actually, just hearing you talk about this made me think about it kind of from this perspective, but I also think it's good that we're talking about Iron Man 3 in this episode, because I think that you can't really talk about this weird end of an era of movie theaters without talking about the superhero boom of the last decade.
Yeah.
And I think
Endgame ended it all.
Well, and Disney basically spending 2019 cashing out of the movie theater business. Mm-hmm. And they spent 2019 releasing, however many movies. Two of them were like, end of Star Wars, end of Marvel. And there were these big dramatic endings, one that more or less worked, one that was really bad. And
yeah,
I guess we'll probably eventually mention which one is which. But, I think that this weird thing of like also at the same time, starting Disney Plus and really leaning into the streaming service of it all, sending Star Wars and Marvel straight to streaming services in this way that we can, like, we just watched Warner Brothers and HBO Max just have this entirely like panic driven decision making because they were trying to keep up with Disney. And it's the same thing that we saw of all of the, franchise making of trying to keep up with Disney last decade. And I think Iron Man 3 is a weird fulcrum point in all of it.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I'm not saying that it's just all Disney's fault, but it's clear that, there were certain things that helped drive some nails in the coffin. And I mean, obviously COVID is the other obvious elephant in the room. But I think it's just interesting that that's also what we're talking about today.
I mean, I wonder if the nails are truly in the coffin. I mean, they are definitely on hold.
That's a good point. Pardon me saying, yeah.
Yeah. It's more like Superman dying at the end of Batman v Superman, and the dirt rises from his grave, and you're like, oh, that fucker's going to be back.
Which we'll never talk about again.
But, I agree with you in the sense that I feel like Iron Man 3 is kind of it's interesting because to me the most fascinating aspect or the more interesting aspect of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is in Phase 1. I would say that Iron Man and Marvel's The Avengers are kind of my favorites of Phase 1, and I have a little bit of a soft spot for Thor. It's a silly movie, but I kind of enjoy the first Thor movie. And I really enjoy Iron Man.
Yeah, I don't really like that movie, but yeah.
Fair enough. Iron Man 3, I'm not gonna be a big defender of Thor. I just find it a silly, fun movie.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Iron Man 3, I think, is a really great introduction to Phase 2. I think that in terms of its villain and in terms of the stakes and in terms of the threat being sort of something that's supernatural and otherworldly, it's a nice kind of like leeway into... It's a nice follow-up to the Avengers and kind of that over-the-top bonkersness of like aliens and portals in the sky. I think Iron Man 3 is an appropriate sort of tonal shift into Phase 2. But then Phase 2 is kind of where, other than Guardians of the Galaxy and maybe some parts of Ant-Man, Phase 2 is really where Marvel starts to get a little bit of a bore to me, and it really starts.
Yeah.
It really starts with the one, and I mean, I think if you agree with me on this stance, I think it's probably a stance that most people wouldn't agree with, because these are highly profitable films that I think really, for me, I started to disconnect when Anthony and Joe Russo as directors came into the projects, because Winter Soldier to me is not at all a fascinating film, and I think Civil War and Infinity War and Endgame are all kind of equally okay to kind of not great with Civil War at some moments. And it's interesting how, like, in Phase 3, 2 really great Marvel movies I think came out, Doctor Strange and Thor Ragnarok, and those are both kind of movies where it seems like the director really got to almost put in a little more style and maybe influence on the project than kind of like other projects, because I don't know, and this is very much I can't assume what goes on the set, but for some reason Anthony and Joe Russo's direction in the Marvel universe, just, it feels very I'm going to use the word bland, and it almost feels as if it has become completely a television show in the way it's being shot as well, and there's almost like nothing interesting to the way these fascinating images are being presented sometimes. Like everything is so bonkers and over the top, but I feel like the way it's presented is so boring and just not really interesting.
Well, they kind of decided that it was like, this idea of like no masterpieces but no Fs.
Yes.
Like, we're just, like we promise you're going to get a C or a B. And I think that the sameness, and I think that the kind of the showrunner quality that Kevin Feige had over the Marvel Cinematic Universe can be very endemic when looking at Iron Man 3, because I think that the kind of like the auteur filmmaker that Shane Black is, more or less, combined with this studio filmmaking is an interesting thing, because I think that Shane Black, for however interesting of a filmmaker is, usually his forays into studio filmmaking, I think, have been ultimately failures. But I think, so my personal relationship with what Marvel is, so this came out right as I was graduating college, as I said. And it's so like the first Marvel movie, Iron Man came out while I was still in high school, and all of Phase 1 happened while I was in college. I saw Avengers when I was studying abroad in England, like with my study abroad class. We went and saw it a week early, and we were all so excited that we saw it a week early because Avengers Assemble came out a week earlier than Avengers in the US. And I
was
loved
the audience
that movie,
crazy for it there? Sorry to interrupt.
We were all so into it. No, absolutely. And we were all so into it. And the entire concept, I remember being in high school, seeing the stinger of Samuel at the end of Iron Man. And even as somebody who didn't read a lot of comics when he was a kid, like, the idea of an interconnected film universe was a thing that I was so excited about. And I feel like so much of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for me personally, has become just always giving me exactly what I thought I wanted, and me being eternally underwhelmed by it, at least underwhelmed by it. And it's all these things that I just absolutely was certain that I wanted, and I was so excited when I found out about them. Like, I had a young obsession with Firefly, so I loved the movie Serenity, and I found out that Joss Whedon was directing the Avengers, and that's like exactly what I could have asked for, and that's like a thing that like the last decade has like turned to ash in all of our mouths. Any like learning the past of Joss Whedon and these things that we held dear, but like even getting into Age of Ultron, of like that battle of directors and stuff. But like, and then I personally really loved Winter Soldier. I considered Winter Soldier like the high watermark of the franchise. And then I was like, oh man, the Russo brothers are like taking it over. Like, that's exactly what I would want out of this. And then, Civil War I think is not good, but then I think the two final Avengers movies they did they're about as good as they could be, but that's still only like a B,
Yeah.
And it's more interesting to think about than it is, I think, to actually behold.
Yeah. And Winter Soldier is, going back to that, it's it's at least nice in the sense that it stands alone. There isn't a whole lot of call outs or callbacks to kind of like other moments in the franchise. It is kind of a movie that sort of exists in and of itself. I just think that sort of
right.
The decision to kind of make an espionage spy thriller movie was an interesting decision to me, but just for some reason the directing choices I really find uninteresting in that movie. But going back to just Marvel in general, I wanted to say that like I agree with you and a lot of your points. I think the big problem with responding to what you said about like you being excited during phase 1 about this interconnected universe, I think that phase 1 had this feeling of uncertainty to it, that they were making those
potential
movies.
Energy.
Yeah, they were making those movies, but they weren't sure if it was going to work yet. They weren't sure if this plan was going to work yet. And so the callbacks, or just the references and the interconnected aspects of the films, feel more natural and more story-based. And once you get to phase 2, with like Thor the Dark World especially, and especially Avengers Age of Ultron, you get the sense that the franchise is becoming much more concerned with shout-outs to other characters, to other moments we've seen before, to pop culture references.
Yeah,
it just becomes,
when it really feels like a TV show.
Yeah, it just becomes really like this thing, whereas if the things that connected these films in each individual movie were story elements and character elements more so, I think you and I would enjoy these movies more. But it's not that. But it's the fact that it's not like some character aspect that you're finding out about a person, but it's just someone being mentioned by name. And like that's enough to get everyone in the audience excited. Yeah. And it's like, okay, maybe everyone in the audience understands who this person is, but I don't. I don't understand why I'm supposed to be excited about these individuals showing up always. Like it's just go ahead.
But it also creates this odd other side of the coin that when I watch something like Iron Man 3, I can't help but be sitting there and being like, where the hell is Captain America?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Mandarin, the international terrorist that is bombing U.S. soil, is like, personally threatening the president of the United States, and like Captain America just like is not mentioned. Where is the rest of S.H.I.E.L.D.? And I know that like the end of the Avengers is they all kind of go their own ways, but like most of them are still like on Earth. So it's like, wouldn't they know and like be involved in what's going on? And so like, you're right. You don't want the incessant crossovers.
Yes.
But now that this world has been created, as soon as you introduce a threat that big in Act 1, you're kind of like, where the hell is everyone? You can't help but think it. Like,
for some reason I don't. That idea doesn't sort of get in my head, and I think it's a little bit slightly because I just kind of, for one, in terms of like the mini franchises in this Marvel franchise, the Iron Man films are certainly my favorite. And I think they're the most consistently good to great in terms of the Marvel Universe, in my opinion. And the real reason why they're not there is because the movie is $200 million and because they know that Iron Man and Tony Stark can lead a film on his own and they don't need the Avengers to show up. That's the actual reason. But also on some level, you can kind of yada just sort of get away with, he's secluded now. He's going through kind of this weird anxiety attack moments in his life, and so he's secluded himself from the world.
No, and it's more of just like in like the big final set pieces.
Yes.
You're like, where would these people be? You know what I mean? Like,
to some degree, I almost wish Hulk shows up at the end just because we have that post-credit scene as well. But yeah, I do. But I do kind of think that like Iron Man is capable of handling it himself, so he handles it. Like the Mandarin says in the movie, like, I panicked, but then I handled it.
Oh man!
And I guess we'll use that as a jumping off board to go into the movie, because I wanted to just talk about just something that you talked about a little bit earlier in Shane Black coming onto the project.
Yeah,
I definitely think to describe Shane Black at this point as sort of an auteur filmmaker is very appropriate, and I think that comes after he made Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and that was, of course,
his first film. His first
directorial. He's written and directed, and I think he co-wrote Nice Guys and The Predator with a writing partner. But yeah, that's the beginning of like his writing directing career. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, then The Nice Guys. I'm sorry, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and then Iron Man 3, and then The Nice Guys.
Yeah, no,
and
Iron
then
Man 3
Predator.
is his second film.
Yep.
It is his second film. It is so weird.
It makes sense in the sense that Jon Favreau wanted to go and do Cowboys versus Aliens. God knows why.
Good call.
Yeah, great call. Like Will Smith doing Wild Wild West instead of The Matrix. Great call.
No, that's different because Wild Wild West exists. Cowboys and Aliens, that movie just got sucked into a black hole somewhere. Never even happened.
But so Jon Favreau was leaving the franchise, and Robert Downey Jr., I read, brought in Shane Black. And I'm so happy that it happened that way, because I think at that point, Robert Downey Jr., who was paid, I looked up on IMDb, $50 million to star in Iron Man 3. I think he ended
up making $75 million off of this movie.
Oh, wow, really? Jeez, okay.
Yeah, and on the back end, he ended up making $75 million off this movie.
So it seems like he had enough clout to bring in a person and to say to Disney, or to say to Marvel, hey, this is a guy, I made a movie with him, it was a great thing, let him do his thing, and just trust him to some degree. And it's going to be something fun. What'd you say?
I owe him one.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is the reason that he got Iron Man. It's undeniably, like, he had been in jail, he had been sent to TV, which, like, at that time was like a death sentence for an actor, and he, like, couldn't get the insurance to be on Ally McBeal at the time. Like, his insurance cost too much, was like how much of a fucking liability he was. And then, like, Shane Black put him in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and he is amazing in it. Like, it's one of my favorite performances of all time. Easily. Is RDJ in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And he totally owed him one, and it's cool that he brought him in for it.
And it's totally, I mean, Val Kilmer also is great in that movie, but it's definitely just
Michelle Monaghan.
Yeah, but it's definitely just a Robert Downey Jr. kind of showpiece, and it really almost reads as a strange audition for Tony Stark in a lot of ways, and I definitely think that there's a lot of similarities between Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Iron Man 3, especially when we get to the detective scenes and how Tony Stark interacts with Harley the Kid, which I love the scenes whenever they're interacting with each other. I find those scenes incredibly charming. And it feels like it kind of lives in the same spirit of Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, even though obviously that movie's rated R and has a bit of nudity and is kind of Shane Black, I will say, doesn't seem to have a great way of writing female characters. The female characters in his movies are often
not
kind
historically,
of objects of just sort of. At least, I do respect that, because I watched Iron Man 2 also recently, and I really don't like the way that movie introduces Scarlett Johansson and the way that movie kind of like has all the characters look at ScarJo. So I'm sort of glad that in this one, it feels at least like a little bit of that schwarminess is gone, and it's a little more respectful.
How insane!
Go ahead.
How insane is it that Justin Theroux was one of the writers on Iron Man 2? That always rocks my world.
You know what I
assume? As a Leftovers obsessive, yeah, it's crazy.
I just assume that Jon Favreau from Friends was still friends with Jennifer Aniston, and Jennifer Aniston, who was with Justin Theroux at the time, was just like, hey, do you want to work with my husband, and he can write the script?
I mean, I don't even know. He was already in that circle. He wrote Tropic Thunder.
Okay.
He was in Zoolander. He was the breakdancing DJ with the dreadlocks in Zoolander.
Oh,
That's
I do remember
Justin
that.
Theroux.
I do remember that.
Yeah, he's been in that weird circle of those guys for like a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the fact that he helped write Iron Man 2 is bonkers to me.
Yeah, and there's parts of Iron Man 2, that movie gets a really bad rep, but, I think it has some pretty darn funny moments, especially the entire Tony Stark Senator sort of like interaction sequence at like the I don't know where they.
My God, Gary Shandling.
Yes, like that whole scene is so funny, and Sam Rockwell is really great in it. There's a lot of nice moments to Iron Man 2. The biggest problem, probably I would say, is Mickey Rourke as an actor and Mickey Rourke as a character. That is just like not interesting.
I think Iron Man 2 has a lot of the same problems that I think Iron Man 3 has. I think both those movies are just messy. Like, I personally think Iron Man 3 is messy. I think that, like, all of the weird subplots that have been obviously cut out of this movie, that you can see, like, vestigial, like, limbs of old subplots coming out of the side of this movie, I think is, like, weird and makes it feel disjointed.
Interesting.
And I think, you know, it's almost the opposite of Iron Man 2, where they're like just trying to add as many subplots as they can. This one, it's like they had a million and like seem to, you know, like, I don't know, like famously Chris Gethard had a whole scene in the beginning of this movie that was like setting up the Iron Patriot thing, which was probably for the best cut. But like, I don't know, there's the weird aspect that like what's her name, actress Rebecca Mader, who is the redhead woman who plays the nun who like melts Rhodey's suit arms in this, and then like pulls off her I'm miming pulling off her habit, like her nun thing. And she was like an actress from Lost and stuff, but like she has like I think like multiple cut scenes from this movie. There's like the recut version of this movie that was published, that was seen in Chinese theaters, that had an extra subplot with like a Chinese character in it.
Oh wow!
Yeah, this movie, it had like a lot of extra weird stuff.
Oh my god! Was
like
Wu
lost in the edit.
Was the gentleman at the beginning in that party scene the character he gets introduced to by Hope? I believe Hope, like from the first film, introduces him to a guy named Wu was the last name.
I think it's a female character. Like there's like a Chinese character that's entirely excised from the movie.
Doesn't exist in the movie as it is. Wow.
I think that that's the case. Or maybe like is like seen in, you know, but like doesn't have any lines.
It's so interesting how for some reason I don't get the sense of that. It doesn't feel as stitched together. The only thing that I do feel I can kind of see the remnants of a better movie almost in a way is I did read up online that initially Rebecca Hall's character was supposed to be much more of a puppet master in the initial drafts, and was a much bigger character. And it definitely feels the way she kind of seemingly teeters back and forth. Although I think the script explains accurately why she's doing that, it does kind of also feel a little bit like she was supposed to be a bigger aspect of the story at one point.
And because of that, the script has nothing to do with her, and they just shoot her and kill her in like a really stupid way that is like a part of this movie I really don't like. Like Rebecca Hall gets like almost a chance to do something and then is just like goes like awkward villain and then is just killed. And it's I don't know if it was Bob Iger, whoever was the head of Disney at that time. I think it was specifically and explicitly, we can't have the villain be a woman. I think that was the note. It can't have the villain be the woman.
Which is too bad. Because I
dumb.
do think the movie would be better, but I do love and it's interesting how you respond by saying that the movie is a mess, because I find it a lot less messy than Iron Man 2. I find the plot very linear, and I really enjoy kind of the solving mystery aspect of it, and sort of like, we know immediately that this is not a bomb, this is exploding people, but we still kind of watch Tony Stark go through the process of investigating and stuff. I kind of feel tonally like this one is, and it's and I, you know, it's I'm basically responding and disagreeing, but because I for some reason I just don't respond to it and think it's messy, because I think that the way the story goes, it feels linear to me, and tonally, in a weird way, this feels like the perfect tone for an Iron Man movie, even more so than the first and the second one. Because to me, the first and the second one have this kind of this tone of seriousness to them that does kind of contrast well with Tony Stark's sarcasm, but in this movie, it's almost as if the movie itself is sarcastic with Tony Stark. It's almost like the movie itself is having the fun that he feels inside of him. This sort of like silly, careless, charging forward attitude, like, that leads him to do what I think is one of the stupidest and dumbest and probably the most just least believable sequences of the film, which is Tony giving away his home address for a terrorist to come and destroy.
What a weird and silly scene.
I do not understand how they thought that, despite the 2 movies that came before this, that he would still be stupid enough to make that decision. And the actual house destruction sequence is a low point in the movie for me in terms of visual effects. I just think the effects of that movie, that house coming down. Go ahead.
I think that that is a little, it doesn't age well. I agree with you that those visual effects don't age well. I also think that some of the suit effects also don't age well. But I think that is a complaint that can be made through the entire back half of the Marvel franchise, is that like Robert Downey Jr. was like, I'm going to be in a tracksuit and you guys can put the Iron Man costume around my body. And like it's pretty easy to tell.
Yeah.
And this was, working out some of the kinks on that. And, but there's also a couple, I think in the third act, some of the cool sequences of like jumping in and out of the suits, I think that those effects, work well.
Oh, I love the destructible suit, like attaching itself to him, detaching, going to Gwyneth Paltrow, detaching from her, coming back to him. Like that suit and how it works and the multiple pieces of it. I love it. I especially love when he escapes from Killian's, from like the prison sort of dungeon scene, and he only has a glove and a foot to kind of like shoot himself around.
I think that is cool. I do not like the way that scene is shot or edited. If I'm being totally honest, like it felt so awkwardly stagey. Like I did not love it. I think that I don't know if Shane Black has the best eye for like action.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like he can write action. I don't know if his like editors or shooting's eye has latched onto that particularly well.
That sequence works for me. The one that doesn't, editing wise, is the kitchen scene where he kills Stephanie Shostak. That sequence is really overly edited.
It's so highly edited.
Yeah, and that isn't also an issue of. I would also say that's an issue of a lot of Marvel movies in general too. They're not movies that are well edited. I don't think.
Well, I think they're overly tweaked and overly edited, and I think that it's weird because then after this, Shane Black went off and did The Nice Guys, which was like a very similar vibe. Well, very different, like, time frame, but, still like the buddy cop PI type of story that is also Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Yes.
And then goes and does The Predator, which also is such an over-edited movie, a movie that apparently took like a year and a half to get a final cut out of, and is like I think a bad movie. Like that movie is really bad. Like Trevante Rhodes is charming as all fuck in that movie. Like Trevante Rhodes is incredible in that movie. That movie's really bad.
Yeah. I would mostly agree, honestly. Yeah.
And it's just kind of so strange that he like went back to his roots, did another thing, and then went right back to a studio picture that like seems like he tried to do what he could with certain characters, and you see these moments of Shane Blackiness that then is just in this movie that he clearly, I just felt like he has no control over.
Yeah.
It's like he's like holding onto a fire hose.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think that. Going back to this movie, I think that's kind of why I do enjoy this movie, because I feel like Shane Black, it feels like he did have a little more control than some directors that came before him. Maybe not Favreau, because I think probably Favreau is, first of all, Iron Man is definitely far and away, in my opinion, the best of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think. But
for a lot of reasons, that's probably true.
But I do like that Shane Black feels like he's able to come in and have some fun with this story. And that kind of, even though this isn't qualified as a comedy,
true. Yeah.
This is kind of the first time actually it feels like Marvel made a movie that feels like a comedy. In a lot of its, especially in a lot of its plot twists are jokes. Like the main one, which is the main problem that a lot of people have with this movie, is the Mandarin himself, who, when he shows up, I remember when I first saw this movie, the Mandarin showed up, and I was like, wow, this is really dark and overly serious, and he just seems offensive in a lot of ways, and I really don't like this character. But then when the twist is revealed, I thought that was hysterical. I thought that made all of the, like, every single scene and every single overly edited sort of like video of the Mandarin made more sense to me, because the whole thing is a farce. The whole thing is just this ridiculous, like, kind of like villainy person that they're trying to create, and then it's just like, no, he's just an actor. And I thought that's when the movie really wins me over, especially in my first viewing. Like, I love that twist. I think it's so funny.
And that scene on its own actually works for me pretty well. I think
cool.
Ben Kingsley's performance is really funny in this movie. I think that Ben Kingsley knows what he's doing. He understands the assignment, you know, and like I think is real on both fronts. Like the bullshit, really racist, dicey terrorist caricature, and the silly British actor caricature. Like both of I think he's doing very funny. I think that the character of the Mandarin is handled strangely, because the first act of this movie wastes very little time. It goes through a lot of stuff. And like they basically are just like, the Mandarin is taking responsibility for these bombings. Rhodey is already investigating it. Rhodey is already Iron Patriot. You know, I think the whole point of the Chris Gethard scene is like the pitch of them becoming Iron Patriot, and they're like, fucking cut it out. Let's just start with that. Yeah. And like, there's things that, like, some of it feels rushed, but it also feels like that very kind of like 80s buddy cop thing where we're just going to like set up a couple of like big existing plot threads into the movie and kind of run with it. Yeah.
But it also takes the time to show Happy as like a badge like cop who's always just like badge.
Yep.
Like, I love those
that's kind of funny.
Those little tweaks.
But I guess what I'm saying is that ultimately I like the twist with the Mandarin. I do think that in the third act that takes the air out of the balloon a little bit for me. After the event of getting to enjoy his performance, the ultimate implication of that, like, just third act of meaning, now it's just like fire breathing Guy Pearce, who's just like being very openly creepy, like, you are my trophy, and like that weird shit. And like I don't know, it just kind of becomes like another like dude who wishes he had been Tony Stark. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, which is kind of like what all of the other villains are and have been, just like some competitor or guy who wishes he was Tony Stark. And like, that's a problem that I have with a lot of Marvel villains, is that they're always just like, well, what's like the antithesis of our character? So like, let's just have Black Panther fight another dude in a Black Panther suit. And like, you know, like, I just feel like all the villains are just direct mirrors of the heroes. And I know there's like a few exceptions, but I feel like that's been an issue.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what Killian becomes.
I agree. No, that's kind of what Killian becomes. I think for me, the reason why, and I agree with you in the sense that as a plot point, or just as a character being like a very similar character to Tony in a lot of ways, that is a little unsatisfying in the way that Marvel does it. But for some reason, this one works for me more because you have, in a weird way, that ridiculous fire-breathing scene. And the movie just kind of is not apologizing for the bonkersness of everything that it's about to do.
Right.
And
I can accept that.
Despite the fact that Killian feels like a familiar villain, at least by the end, by the final third act action sequence, I feel like Shane Black and like their team, they get to pull off a lot of really fun fight sequences with just like this guy who has kind of like lava arms that can melt shit, and Tony who just kind of has like a bunch of suits that he could just break and like jump into another one. And I feel like there's a lot of fun that comes.
They've created a good game out of it.
Yes. But I agree that there's a lot in this movie. A lot of what I enjoy about this movie in comparison to the rest of Marvel is not the fact that I don't think it contains kind of the same problems that Marvel movies usually have, but it's the fact that it just sort of seems to kind of have a more snarky way of getting through it, and more of like just like a jokey way of being like, yeah, these are kind of the silly things we've got to do, but you know, you're going to have a lot of fun kind of watching the ridiculousness and the over-the-topness of that third act just becomes completely bonkers, and it's just like, just huge tanker explosions and just like absurd
but
sequences.
that also I think that makes some of the stuff feel kind of arguably low stakes. You know, I think that the Pepper death fake out I think is just so dumb and is so played for nothing. Like he is just like and then just like turns and looks and he's kind of angry, but like even when he's talking about Pepper, he still is referring to her in the present tense. Like it's just this like weird thing that just like it is played like no one thinks that Pepper is dead. And
well, I as an audience member know she's not because I already know she has the extremis even in the first viewing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, but Tony knew, I think.
Tony knew too, but yeah, I agree. The movie didn't need that. But at the same time, like, he didn't know for sure, I guess, that she could have survived that.
I guess.
But I understand your point in that sequence. That definitely doesn't. But once again, like, I feel like, you're right. But these just feel also, to me, it's interesting how it's interesting because they feel like problems that are so present in all the Marvel movies anyways, that I just kind of, I'm like, this is just one of the things I have to accept that.
Like, what difference does it make?
Yeah. I just think it's kind of the fact that I look at this movie more as a comedy, that I'm kind of able to get through those moments and laugh them off almost more as jokes. Like Gwyneth Paltrow falling to her death is almost funny to me in like the fourth or like fifth viewing now, because I know she's gonna come back and I know she's gonna save the day, and I mostly just now admire Robert Downey Jr. and I'm just like, wow, they're asking him to literally just go from trying to save his girlfriend to his girlfriend dying to him angry and I'm gonna now fight this fucking asshole who killed my girlfriend. And it's just like, I'm impressed that he's able to somewhat put in a performance that communicates that to me.
I don't know. I don't think that I saw much difference at all. He just turned and was like, I guess we're gonna fight now. So he'd be over that way. Which way? Where's my eye line?
Where's the tennis ball?
He'd be over there.
Show me the
I'll
tennis
look
ball.
over there. Yeah, I'll look over there. Sorry, that's mean.
Where's my eye line?
But yeah, and I think that I also think that one of the other weird things about this movie is that it runs through. Shane Black is kind of all about like pastiche, like, he like picks like an obvious overt tone or a vibe and he really plays that up. He's like all about his like Christmas stuff. And when you look at like a lot of his screenplays that he's written, especially stuff like Monster Squad or Last Action Hero that are very like self-referential, as is Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is so self-referential. But I also think that his best work is when he finds a pastiche for a whole movie and really sits and lives in it, which I think is what Kiss Kiss Bang Bang does. It's what The Nice Guy does. And I think that this movie has like 5 pastiches and it kind of just like stone skips through them, like it does this like really fast act 1, or not really fast, but a loaded act 1.
Yes.
Right? Like that is the like panic attacks on the mystery case with the weird added like terror subplot of the Mandarin, right?
Well, I would say the house getting destroyed is the end of act 1.
Right, that's the 40-minute mark. He like lands, I think that he like flies away and it cuts to black like at like 39 minutes or whatever.
It's around there, yeah.
And so there's like, and then there's like the like small town guy down on his luck meets the plucky kid. That's like a 20-minute section. Yeah. And it's like, and I can enjoy, I mean, I will eat plenty of crow when we go down the line in our podcast and I talk about how I love Danny Boyle's ability to jump between genres in a bunch of movies. So I know I'm an asshole, but I feel like in this, it's kind of like he just barely touches in on a couple of ideas. People are like, oh no, it's like a buddy cop with him and Don Cheadle. And it's like, Don Cheadle does not have a lot of screen time in this movie. And that section of them doing the buddy cop thing is like, their 2 mutual breakout scenes and then like 1 moment of them in a shootout. And I just feel like that's a thing that was touched upon, but I don't think that's a thing that can actually like define the satisfactory nature of the movie. It's just like a thing that they kind of like reference or kind of do, but they don't get to live in at all.
So it's interesting because I disagree, and I'm curious. I wanted to ask you, did you watch the post-credit scene for this movie? And have you seen the post-credit scene for this movie?
Is that the one where it's that he's been talking to Banner the whole time?
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
which in terms of post-credit scenes, I give a thumbs up because a lot of them are way too plot heavy.
I do too, and it's interesting because what I wanted to say is that, for one, that is my favorite post-credit scene of any Marvel movie, and the reason why is because it ties, to me, directly into the reason why the story is being told the way it's told. So I do agree with you in the sense that I think that Shane Black is running through multiple genres, but that post-credit scene, basically, it's Tony. He, in his own voice, is explaining his story to us, the audience, who is Bruce Banner just sleeping. But that is sort of what that scene is telling us. And I feel like that is what this movie is, and the thing that gets me through it is the consistency of tone, in that I feel like this story is being told to me almost by Tony himself. And like the camera and the filmmaking is sort of representing how he would tell this story of his life.
Which feels a little ripped directly from Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
I think
even down to like the opening narration of him being like, oh, well, I'll back up and blah, blah, blah. Like, those sort of kind of things. It's so directly pulled from Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Yeah, and in a weird way, I don't mind that stuff. It makes this movie kind of almost. I have a lot of love for Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, despite its kind of weird ways of dealing with women, and I kind of feel like this movie has a special place in that sort of universe as kind of just a sort of like spiritual sequel to Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, but in a totally different franchise. And I really do think that like that tone shines in the second act. The second act is probably my favorite part of the movie, which is Tony without a suit, Tony just kind of having anxiety attacks sometimes, and then using like Christmas ornaments to go and like blow up a compound to like get the Mandarin. Like I really do find all of that stuff so playful, and like the fun detective side of things, and then when I get to the bonkers third act, I'm fine because I've already had kind of this nice slower sort of character piece where Tony is just kind of allowed to be a person and just like figure things out on his own in the state of
you get that kind of full meal, so you're like, all right, give me the dessert, just give me the sky battle now, I'll take it.
Yes, I think so. And I do find it funny, just really random, I do find it funny that this movie takes place in Rose Hill, Tennessee, but it was actually shot in North Carolina.
Right, of course. I mean, that's, people fake so much shit. Yeah,
it's true. But I just thought of it because that's where he goes at the beginning of Act 2. But yeah, I love that sequence of the movie, and that. And
I think.
Go ahead.
I think the kid works. I think this movie gives good kid.
Yeah,
more or less.
I think so too. The bully line is
Ty
a little.
Simpkins.
Yeah, the bully line is a little bleeding heart and a little strange. That part always kind of like where he goes like, "What's his name?" The bully that attacks you, and there's been like no mention.
Yeah, but. But I also think that I can't believe I'm defending it because you're right. It's cheesecake, but also the payoff with, remember what I told you about bullies when he pulls out like the thing, it works. There's a reason for it.
It's true. It's a good point.
With
There's
James Badge Dale, who I love.
Yes. No,
that dude's great, man.
No, he's fantastic, especially in this movie. That's not the way the Mandarin does business.
Yeah, he's a good actor, dude. He's been around like for a while. Like, speaking of like problematic depictions of Middle Eastern terrorists, he was on 24 like way back in the day. He had like one season of 24 where he was like Jack Bauer's young partner who was secretly fucking his daughter.
Oh, that's so great.
And the only thing that I really actively remember about him in it is that he has a briefcase of like a bioweapon handcuffed to his wrist, and the bioweapon's about to go off, and they can't get it into the sealed room because it's handcuffed to his wrist. So Jack Bauer gets an axe and chops his hand off. And I think maybe they sew the hand back on. I don't know. That show's insane.
That show sounds insane. I never really watched 24, so I probably saw
24 was nuts.
I probably saw him for the first time in The Departed, because he comes up like right at the end.
He's good in The Departed.
Because he comes up right at the end. I think he kills Leonardo DiCaprio. Spoilers. Sorry.
No. He kills.
I thought it was Leo because I thought
How's
he goes
it go?
like I thought he's the guy who basically says like you thought.
Oh
you were
no,
the
you're
only
right.
One.
He kills. Yeah, you're right. He kills Leo, and then Damon kills him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spoilers. The Departed. Jeez. Whatever. That movie's 15 years old.
Yeah, whatever. And then I remember him from like roles like I remember him in The Lone Ranger, and he was also. The Lone Ranger is probably. Oh, what is the one that it's like the Michael Bay Benghazi?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
He's in that too.
Like
13 hours
or whatever.
Yeah,
with John Krasinski. Mm-hmm. Yep. He's like a real kind of like macho dude actor, but he's willing to play weirdos, and he's kind of always kind of like down for whatever,
Yeah, I do like the performances in this movie. I do think everyone kind of shows up. I think everyone shows up to play. I don't think there's any. I think everyone has a really. Some people don't get a lot to do. I think Rebecca Hall.
Yeah,
I like what she's doing, but she doesn't have much.
Where you see, when you see her kind of like emotional turmoil, I think that you can read it on her face.
Yes.
But I just kind of wish that she had gotten to be more of a. I wish that she had gotten to be more of a character. Her being the villain would have been a lot nicer because Killian just feels kind of so like. Boringly creepy and exhaustive for me.
I don't
much as I like, and in the first two acts I do like Pierce. Mm-hmm. I think Guy Pearce gives I really like Guy Pearce in a lot of stuff, but I think he's good in this.
Yeah, I think he's good, but I agree that once you get to the scene where it becomes like every male villain is a rapist kind of like thing where he's like creeping on her and calling Gwyneth Paltrow his trophy. It's like
just
you didn't need that at all because I
find
really,
something new to do.
And I really liked the fact that the story was basically saying Rebecca Hall is sort of the scientist who wants Tony's help, and Killian is sort of the crazy person who doesn't want Tony's help, but he needs Tony's resources. And there was always like this nice play of like Rebecca Hall wants Tony alive, and she goes to try to work with him, and like Killian, and it sucks that like. That couldn't
like,
just
let
be the
them
motivation.
Have a dynamic.
Yeah, and I wish it could have just been that instead of I'm also now taking Gwyneth Paltrow because I want to. Whereas because a couple of scenes previous, it didn't even seem like he wanted to kidnap Gwyneth Paltrow, and that the only reason why he was doing that was because Rebecca Hall was saying, "No, we need Tony Stark, so we need to take her so we can get Tony Stark's resources." So that part always does kind of like I definitely do not think. This is a perfect movie, and since I've done this for the first 3 episodes, I'll just stick with this. This is like, if I were to give this movie a number, I'd give it like an 8 out of 10. So I enjoy it less than a Warcraft. It has those like moments that kind of, like that sequence where you find out Guy Pearce has just taken Gwyneth Paltrow as a trophy. There are those kind of scenes that sort of remove me from the experience and make me go like, this could be better. Like, and that's one of those.
What did that need to be here for? Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, I think everyone is really kind of showing up and doing a great performances in this. We've talked about the career of Don Cheadle in our previous episode.
Yeah, we talked about Cheadle last week.
Did we talk about his career that much, though? Did we go into that much details?
Not a whole lot, I guess, but we did talk about Cheadle last week.
Okay, we did talk about Cheadle.
We didn't, and he's, however little or much screen time he gets in this, he's great. I think he's fantastic. He's so good, man. Don Cheadle is just a legend.
No, he's I hate to say it. I really do think that was kind of it was a good choice to recast Rhodey with Don Cheadle because and once again I went back and watched Iron Man 2 and from the second Don Cheadle shows up, he just has this line where he's like, "I'm here. Whatever it is, what it is. Get used to it." And he like walks away, and it's just like it's such a great like. Just I'm here. I'm here to play.
His weird like B team arc of the entire Marvel franchise, I think, is one of the funny little runners that actually works. Yep. Like his whole thing in his whole thing in Avengers 2 when he's like telling his story about like being War Machine and like Thor is like entirely unimpressed by it. And he's like, man, that usually like kills at parties, but like Thor thinks it's fucking boring. Like I don't know. Like I think that Cheadle is he's just great. He's really, really funny.
No, and And like, yeah, we did talk a little bit about, I think, his performances. The most memorable one that I just want to mention, if I didn't mention it last episode, is this movie Miles Ahead, where he plays Miles Davis, and he is just absolutely fucking fantastic in that movie. And I think he shot that literally between Age of Ultron and Civil War. So it came out like right in between those two, or like right after Age of Ultron, a few months later, it came out in theaters, and that movie's amazing. He's great in that.
Yeah, I mean, it's also cool because it's like, you know, that was like a big passion project for him.
Yep.
And, you know, for something like Age of Ultron or about his time, I guess he's in Civil War a little more, but like he's probably only on set like a couple weeks for each one of those movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's in the beginning of Age of Ultron and then he's at the end of Age of Ultron, and mostly at the end of it, just like, you know, CG face in a robot suit. So like,
and a lot of these movies
especially for like that movie, he probably was able to like get a great paycheck off that and then just go do a passion project. Like that's killer.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I guess those movies are kind of just show up in a green room a lot of the times and shoot your scene and go home. So they must kind of just like, it does kind of seem like factory filmmaking in the sense that they're just kind of like churning out.
I mean, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's why it's no A's, no F's, you know?
So let's.
I hope that there will be a way for the house style to get broken away from eventually, because I think that like cool superhero storytelling with those sorts of budgets, like I think that can be exciting if it's not so samey. And I just would love to see if, you know, somebody actually got, I guess like Taika Waititi's getting, you know, more and more chances to do stuff, but he's still very much just like, yeah, plug me into like the prevised house style and I'll have fun with it, you know?
See, but I at least, once again, I feel like very similarly to Shane Black in, like, I do feel like these movies, the director can only really do so much in terms of kind of bringing in a new style, because there is a level of consistency that needs to stay. And I feel like in a similar way to Shane Black, Taika Waititi, and to some degree, I would even argue Scott Derrickson with his directing of Doctor Strange.
I think also especially Ryan Coogler with Black Panther.
Yes.
Yep.
They are definitely able to kind of get a freshness of style to them. And I hope that with movies coming out, I do look forward to seeing Eternals, Black Widow, and I do also look forward to seeing, Shang-Chi.
Black Widow looks so boring.
I mean, you know, I'm just excited to see I'm excited to see a Black Widow movie, but I won't get into that.
I guess.
I'm excited to see that. And
I like Florence Pugh.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Florence.
America's favorite movie star.
Is it Pugh or Puh? Like, I honestly thought it was
it's Pugh.
It's Pugh, okay. Like, I don't mean to be rude. I thought it was maybe just
like
Puh.
Hugh.
Oh, that makes much more sense. Florence Pugh, okay. But I was just going to say real quick,
Hugh.
I think, depending on how it turns out, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness might be a movie where if Sam Raimi can actually pull off some interesting choices with the style, and if he can do it successfully, I think that might be a nice kind of like doorway into more directors being able to kind of have more freedom with what they do with these films.
I don't know. Sam Raimi's recent relationships with studio filmmaking have not been great, though.
It's not great in the sense that the last one he did was Oz the Great and Powerful, but I think all that proved was his, hey, Disney, I can work for you and I will do the thing you want me to do. And I think since he had that, and since that movie was actually a relative success in terms of financially speaking at the box office, it wasn't a flop. It was a decent success, I think, worldwide.
Yeah, I guess it was okay.
I think that he's probably now in that comfortable zone where Disney like reached out to him and basically, you know, they know that he's the person who did not only Evil Dead 2, but Spider-Man 2. He is the person to kind of go completely bonkers with sort of like, if you give him a setup, that he can get comfortable and he can kind of stray outside of that zone in a lot of fun ways and maybe do it.
And there are fewer filmmakers still working right now who have been involved in as many franchises as Sam Raimi.
Yeah. Very true.
You know, Evil Dead has 4 movies and a TV show. He started the Spider-Man franchise. He made, you know, he had 3 Darkman movies. He tapped into the Oz franchise. He, you know, he like had multiple TV franchises.
Yeah,
like
TV is his big thing. Yeah, definitely. Xena,
you know, it's
and
like
Hercules.
him and like Tim Story or someone. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, Xena's his big. I would say that's his big television show back in the 90s. But he also has continued to do, I think not Spartacus. Wait a minute.
He produced the Spartacus series.
He did produce the Spartacus series. Yeah. And he also
that was always a guilty pleasure of mine. That show's like kind of good.
No, it is kind of good. I think it didn't last super long, but television.
Well, it's like 3 seasons in a mini series.
And Sam Raimi also kind of like, he produces a lot of really interesting shit. He gets some, like, some of it's kind of, you know, I know people don't love the sort of like modern Grudge remake and stuff that he worked on, but I do like his work with what is it? Did he do the Evil? Well, I guess it's actually just a remake of the Evil Dead. All right, so never mind. I can't really.
Which is a cool movie.
Yeah. I can't really think of specifically what other, but I know that as a producer, he produces a lot of horror movies.
He just produced that alligator movie, Crawl.
Yes,
that came out like last year.
Thank you. Yes,
with Alexander Aja.
Mm-hmm. And Don't Breathe was another one.
Like, right, that was another Raimi. I mean, Sam Raimi's the man. That's exciting to think that he. I mean, so I hope that he can do something in the Disney franchise. But
I hope
it's
so.
Like also just tough because like it seems like the Disney franchise machine kind of just like chews people up and spits them out a lot of the time. And like Jon Favreau has followed that weird, you know, when we're looking at Iron Man, like Jon Favreau has followed that very strange career where like he was like a director and an actor kind of coming up at the same time, and like sometimes would direct himself but wasn't always directing himself, and had that weird relationship with Vince Vaughn where they were really kind of like feeding off of each other in like the late 90s. And you know, then directed, you know, the guy's directed like some iconic movies. He directed Elf, you know, and Zathura, which is actually kind of low-key a good movie.
Oh, cool. Chef was pretty good.
But he... Sorry?
I liked Chef. Sorry to interrupt you. I liked Chef a lot, too.
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah. I haven't seen Chef, but I've heard it's good. And he's like, you know, he seems like a natural filmmaker. And then he, like, does Iron Man. Becomes an executive producer, is still an executive producer on all Avengers movies. Like, you know, he was getting a chunk of Endgame to this day, is still a part of that, is still acting in those movies, is still in the Spider-Man movies.
True.
And then after phase 1 of Marvel broke off and became like the live action, well, quote unquote, live action, like Disney remake guy, and made like, you know, The Jungle Book and Lion King, like the Lion King, a movie that like somehow is already entirely forgotten, totally creeped people out, and still made over $1 billion.
Yeah.
You know, everybody just saw it like it was fucking homework.
Yeah.
And then also like then becomes like a creator and showrunner on The Mandalorian, not just like some dude who like, oh, we're going to put his name on it. No, he's like writing and directing multiple episodes of The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Which has its high and its low points, but it's just strange. This like, he's become like the fucking man.
Yeah.
You know? And he's still not ashamed to like wear weird slicked back hair and walk around asking people about their badges and shit. You know, like he's still just be the comic relief character in this movie.
In every scene of this movie,
like he seems like he has no ego about it.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, absolutely. No, and I mean, he's come a long way since his swinger days as playing the Money character. I can't even remember his name, but I just remember everyone in that movie would always be like, "You're so money."
Oh my gosh. I haven't seen that movie in a really, really long time. I don't even think I could have an opinion on it.
All I remember is my brother showed it to me. My brother, who's about 8 years older than me. I remember in college, I was in college when he showed it to me. And I remember he just prefaced it by going like, this movie I thought was so funny because it mirrored, he basically said like it mirrored my dating experience, like starting off as a person dating, going to bars in like the late 90s. Like he was just like, this movie felt exactly like that world. And I was just like, oh, that's cool. Like I didn't get to experience that, but it definitely, when I watched it, it definitely has that feel. Like there's the best scene I think in the film is Jon Favreau. I mean, it's a cliche that they now has been done over again many times in films, but Jon Favreau like calls a woman that gave him her number earlier that night, and he calls her and leaves like 8 voicemails. Just like the first one is kind of like hi, but then he gets cut off, and he just keeps calling back to like make sure his message is like perfect. And by like the 10th time or something, the woman picks up, and she's just like, I'll just say his name is John, and she's just like, hi, John, and he's just like, Melissa, hey. And she goes, never call me again, and just hangs up. And that is like his performance in that movie. Everyone probably focuses on Vince Vaughn, but Jon Favreau in Swingers is, and I don't think he's directing that. I think Doug Liman's directing that one. I think Jon Favreau might have written that or co-written the script. But he's fantastically funny in that movie. He's
also
so good.
Weird career Doug Liman has had. That's a conversation for another day,
episode maybe. But yeah, Doug Liman.
When we do our Jumper episode. Man, we have a mutual friend.
We do, who loves Jumper.
Who we should get him on here to talk about Jumper. That'd be
great. Do you
like
Jumper?
No,
neither
do
I.
He's terrible. But he will come on and be like, guys, I don't know if you noticed, but there's that scene where they're all teleporting. This movie's great.
Maybe future episode Jumper.
Oh my gosh!
But since we're talking about actors' careers, I wanted to talk about Robert Downey Jr. because I mean he has a famous career for a lot of reasons, but I don't really want to talk about. I'm not going to really comment on what's happened in his personal life. I just want to talk about my experience.
Oh, I mean, people battle with addiction. It's tough, man. Yeah, it's fine.
And I want to talk about his films, and in a weird way, I was first introduced to Robert Downey Jr. in a romantic comedy that I feel like I haven't watched in 10 years, but when I was younger, I quite enjoyed it. I was like a kid when I saw it. I think the first time. Have you ever seen Only You with him and Marissa Tomei?
Oh, Be Still My Heart. I mean, I'd watch it.
Oh, it's like a 1994 Marissa Tomei, so she is stunning in this. And so is Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr. is pretty hunky in this movie. I think he plays.
Oh, I bet.
I think he plays like, it says Peter Wright. For some reason, I thought his character was maybe French or Italian, but I don't know. But it's basically like a woman goes to like a foreign country and falls in love. But that's kind of the first movie that I think of Robert Downey Jr. in as a kid.
That's interesting.
And then U.S. Marshals was probably another movie that I saw him in when I was.
That was an early one for me. That's like one of my earliest points for him because I wasn't really into the whole like 80s Brat Pack stuff. Like a lot of those movies have never really crossed my bow.
No.
So yeah, definitely U.S. Marshals. And I really like his performance in U.S. Marshals.
Oh yeah, I do too. No, I mean that one and U.S. Marshals and The Fugitive are both pretty solid films. Although I think The Fugitive is definitely better.
Well, I mean, it's tough. It's tough to make a sequel to one of the greatest films ever made when you don't have the lead actor in it again.
This is true. This is very true.
And I guess they kind of did it.
No, like considering that not having Harrison Ford, U.S. Marshals, the fact that it's a success, and I mean it does have kind of the charm of Tommy Lee Jones to really kind of get you through that movie. Well,
he was still there to anchor it, and if you lose Harrison Ford and you add RDJ and Wesley Snipes, that's a fighting chance.
Yeah.
And that's a good movie. Yeah.
I agree. And I mean, just overall, like, it's pretty, I'm not a big fan of his more recent movies. I haven't seen Doolittle, but for some reason.
Oh, apparently that movie's like a travesty.
Yeah, it doesn't look great. And I need to still see The Judge, because I still haven't seen that. And I hear The Judge and also his performance in The Soloist I hear are pretty good, but I haven't seen either of those films.
Those also just feel like really rote, like Oscar baity shit.
I mean, yeah, I guess. But I mean, now he's sort of at that time now in his career where he's done Iron Man and he's made...
Yeah, at this point, he's just a billionaire.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not a billionaire, but at least hundreds of millionaire, right? Like, at least, like, pretty high up there. And, I mean, now it just seems like he kind of every once in a while takes those Oscar baity roles to sort of, see if he can get back in that.
Sure.
But I get it. Like, I mean, I don't know.
No, and when I say it like that, I'm not trying to be over dismissive. It's just that's never ends up being stuff that I'm, like,
you're right.
Wildly impressed
It's not
with.
like...
It's a certain alley.
There are these films that we sort of like talk about that are just sort of like seen as like these actor performance show pieces, and they usually are not always that kind of great in terms of story, because you know what I mean.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is that it's that. And if it is an Oscar baity, showy performance movie, and when I like see the trailer or look at it, it like clearly has a good script, I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. You know, like I'm not like, it's just that sometimes things just kind of look like they're missing the point. But he has had like a weird, I'm trying to think of like the last, like, I don't know, like what were like recent performances that he's been able to do. I mean, I liked him. Obviously, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is great. He's weird in Gothika.
Yeah.
He's good in his couple of scenes in Bowfinger. Like when I was young, I really liked him in Bowfinger.
Yes.
But I just like can't even. I mean,
Tropic Thunder is something
really commits.
Tropic Thunder is something people mentioned,
obviously,
but that's
he got a
kind
fucking Oscar nomination.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how.
He got an Oscar nomination for that.
Yeah, and that's a...
Well,
it's strange how I don't see that as a problematic role, only because of the way that the movie is presenting it as offensive.
It is in the text as being problematic.
Yes.
And if somebody watches it and is offended by it, then like by all means, I get it, because it's a thing that can be deemed as offensive. Like I'm not, you know, breaking any new ground by saying like, of course somebody could totally be offended by that. Yeah. That's not really my problem, because it is in the text that it is offensive and stupid and shallow, the thing that he is doing.
Yes.
And I just think that movie's not great.
No, it's not great.
Like that movie's not very good, and I think that some of the racial stuff certainly gets carried away in that movie. Yeah. And like I think that if anyone deserves an Oscar nomination for a supporting performance in that movie, it's obviously Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah. But that's a very good point.
But I just think that it's really silly that he got an Oscar nomination for that performance. Not even because of it's like quote unquote problematic. Like I can see how people would see it that way. But even despite that, I think that it's just like not worthy of that.
Well, the fact that it gets an Oscar nomination kind of proves, in my opinion, just how stupid the Academy Awards can be, and just how like not in terms of like not getting the punchline. Like he gets awards for doing that in the fake films. It's like, that's the joke. The joke is that you're so stupid you would give him an award for it, and then they go and nominate him for Best Supporting Actor.
And they nominate him.
And it's just like, you are so just uselessly dumb.
Yeah. It's also strange because I used to really stump, not that like James Franco needs anybody sticking up for him at this point, but like 2008 is also the same year as Pineapple Express. And if you're like the way that the Academy Awards sometimes like to reach into, like they'll find comedy movies and give a supporting actor nomination to them, something like Tropic Thunder or Alan Arkin in Little Miss Sunshine or Bridesmaids. And like if in 2008 they were going to reach over and offer a supporting actor nomination to somebody in a comedy, it probably should have been James Franco in Pineapple Express. Because that's a true fucking performance. Like that movie is, you know, that's like a whole movie with a real goddamn performance in it. That is like, I think James Franco is great in that movie.
That's a good point. You know, I honestly think that he is putting in a performance. So I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And just going back to Robert Downey Jr., just to kind of say one last thing.
Yeah, sure.
There's two other movies that I just remembered that I do remember enjoying his performances in, and they're kind of both strange movies. But he was in Zodiac, and he was also in, I think the year before, A Scanner Darkly. And both of those movies, I think, are very interesting films.
He's really good in Zodiac.
Yeah.
He's really, really good in Zodiac.
Yeah, it seems like that is a underrated David Fincher movie. It doesn't seem like that movie gets talked about a lot, but because it's very long, but it's very good. I enjoy that movie quite a bit.
And it really, I mean, even more so, like, have you watched Mindhunter?
No, actually I haven't.
Like, it might as well be Zodiac. Okay. Like it in the tone and the things that it's exploring, that like you could like we watched Mindhunter and then we like watched Zodiac again, and like watching Zodiac you could just imagine like the two main characters from Mindhunter just walking in the door at any moment while you're watching Zodiac. It's really cool.
Okay. I think you've mentioned this show before. I'm going to write it down because it's
really good. It's upsetting. It's, you know, half, especially the first season, is them like interviewing serial killers, but, you know, in a dramatized fashion, but it is fucked up. It's dark.
Cool. I'll have to check it out. So going back to the actors, I guess we've talked about a bunch of the guys. Let's talk about some of the ladies. And right off the bat, I want to talk about Stephanie Shostak, because I still remember when I first saw her in this movie, I instantly recognized her because she plays Jacqueline. She plays the surprise Jacqueline in The Devil Wears Prada. And
I do not remember that.
Oh man, she's basically just like, it's not a big role, but she just has this great line where Meryl Streep hates this character and is not happy at all that she's showing up, and Meryl Streep is just like, Jacqueline, I didn't know you were coming, and Stephanie Shostak just walks up and she's like, surprise.
That's funny. I mean, she's good.
She's good.
I didn't recognize her from anything.
I mean,
but that's
honestly,
really funny that you immediately locked in on that.
Those are kind of, because that's kind of the two things, like when I looked over her IMDb yesterday, those are kind of the two things that I recognized. And just because of the fact that I haven't seen her in much, and I actually do kind of think she gets to have some fun in Iron Man 3. I just wanted to shout her out. But honestly,
she gets a couple moments, which is...
Other than those two roles, I was just going to say, other than those two roles, I really don't have familiarity with her acting career.
Right. And which is also, and her getting like a good long sequence, despite it being a little over edited, but like her getting a good sequence of being a baddie is better than Rebecca Mader got, which is the person I was referencing who is like pulling off the nurse's habit. Like she, as I said, was like on Lost, and like she kind of also, due to the writer's strike, her character kind of got a little short shrifted on Lost as well.
Oh, wow.
But I've always liked her, and she's really good. Like, I like her a lot. And then she literally gets to show her face in one scene in this movie.
Yeah. But the ladies get to...
But I mean...
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, just the two big performances in this are Paltrow and Hall.
Yeah. And I feel like for a good portion of the film, I think there are some, there's one scene that doesn't work for me between Paltrow and Rebecca Hall, and for some reason it always kind of feels jarring to me the more I watch it. It's just like this scene that just kind of feels, it's like it's Gwyneth Paltrow and Rebecca Hall, and they're like in a hotel room, and she's just kind of telling the story to Gwyneth Paltrow of her research and how she sort of came to suspect Killian as this person, and she's trying to get her trust, and then Killian shows up. And he basically kind of almost insinuates that Rebecca Hall was at Tony Stark's house the day before, but like the timeline of it feels so strange because we've already had multiple scenes in Tennessee, and that's like the one scene where I feel like I don't know if that was like a scene that was supposed to be somewhere else in the script, but every time I get to it, I'm like, this feels weird, and like...
Yeah, like where did this come from?
Yeah, why are they in this hotel room? And it's almost like a weird, almost like intimate scene between the two of them, because they're on this bed together. It's very strange, but
then also like in this very kind of rote way, immediately later, Killian just shows up and just like, gets bossy and grabs her by the neck and like, okay, now he's got her and now she's a damsel again.
Yeah, like that was a little disappointing, but I do think that Gwyneth Paltrow and Rebecca Hall get some interesting scenes. They get some nice meat to chew on in some of their acting scenes, and I like in terms of like Gwyneth Paltrow, she's not doing much in terms of like an emotional performance, but she's having a lot of fun with like the comedic timing and her interactions with Tony Stark and Rebecca Hall, and I do love that she kind of gets to kill Killian at the end, even though I wish she had a little more time to shine with the Iron Man suit. I enjoy it.
It feels a little not worth it when she shows up and gets to kill him and kind of like be the bad, I don't know, like, yeah, because then she just does this like thing where she just like all of the sudden like explodes a man.
But the like, movie has a man who breathes fire, and that's like...
I know, but like, it just still is like this thing where like Pepper just, she just all of a sudden just murders a person in the most like deeply horrifying way.
That was really violent.
I don't know. Paltrow feels, she does have the line of like, that was really violent, but like she feels a little asleep at the wheel to me for some of this. And you're right. It's fortunate that she and Downey do have good chemistry.
Yes.
I really think they do. So even when she, which I think this continues through all of her appearances really after this movie, in the Marvel movies, all the Spider-Mans and in the Avengers and stuff, I think that she isn't putting in a whole lot, but does work well with Downey, so she gives enough, I
mean, because usually I don't think she's usually given a lot. I think this is one of the few movies where she gets to have a little more. Well, actually, you know what? I think
it's a bummer that this is like some of the most she gets.
It is a bummer, and I mean, she does get a little bit also in Iron Man 2, which is nice, but it is kind of disappointing that, her character in later films, unfortunately, hasn't been as well used, I don't think, by the stories. I'm going back to that ending. I really do. It's funny. I put down the note. Gwyneth getting to kill Killian is a lot of fun, despite the murder. There is a lot of like, the way this movie deals with death is very kind of, just sort of like, it treats death very blasé, I would say, in this movie.
Oh yeah.
But for some reason that works for me, because to me this movie is a comedy. So that is just kind of matching the tone of just like, it's a comedy. Yeah, people might die, but you know what? In the end, it's just going to be kind of funny how they die.
And I guess if you're kind of locked into that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like it all kind of makes it low stakes. I just end up not like finding myself like eagerly like caring very much.
But it's interesting how I feel like all the Marvel movies to me, even if they have high stakes, feel low stakes to me. So despite the fact that I know the stakes aren't, like, I know that these people are going to get away and everything ultimately is going to be fine, I feel like there's a lot more playfulness to the way the action is directed. But I do agree that a lot of it, unfortunately...
I'll give you that.
But I do agree with you that a lot of it is unfortunately lost in the editing, and that is just a problem that a lot of Marvel movies have. I will say that, I'll shout out one scene in this movie that I think is one of the best stunt sequences in any Marvel film. I think the skydiving scene is great. I think that
we should talk about it, because that's a thing I kind of find undeniable about this movie.
The fact that I like assumed watching that sequence that it was very similar to, I'm pretty sure for the most recent Mission Impossible film where Tom Cruise does the Halo jump, they shot that over
with him and Henry Cavill.
Yeah, they shot that over 100 times apparently. And apparently they
no, that's bullshit.
Oh, that's bullshit.
They shot that thing. I feel like they shot the Halo jump. Maybe he has done 100 Halo jumps. Maybe Tom Cruise has, but I feel like they only shot that Halo jump like 3 or 4 times.
Okay. Oh, okay. But apparently, that makes more sense to me. I assumed it would have taken a lot more to get this sequence cut together. But the skydiving scene in Iron Man, apparently they jumped out of a plane just 50 times to get that entire sequence. Wow. And it's fantastic and breathtaking. Even though you have that one line of like, hey, I'm going to give you this electric shock so your hands won't lose their grip. I was like,
I accept it.
I was like, fuck it, whatever. The fact that they're actually shooting this and falling with skydivers is great.
And barrel of monkeys.
Yep.
It's a thing I just can't deny in myself. I am such a sucker for skydiving sequences.
Cool.
Point Break as a child really affected me, I think. And good skydiving sequences always get me. I remember seeing the first Kingsman movie in theaters. Yeah. Which like those movies are hit and miss. The second one's not very good, but like that sequence where it's like, like 8 people jump and they're like, one of you has a dud shoot and they have to like figure it out. Like I love that sequence. Yep. The Halo jump of him having to like reconnect Henry Cavill's oxygen and stuff that's all done in one shot in Mission Impossible Fallout is like a great, I love skydiving sequences.
One of the worst ones is definitely 1995's The Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie, where they like skydive at the very opening of that fucking movie.
Wow, that just unlocked a memory. I remember that one of them had a sky surfboard.
Yeah, had like a skateboard,
like
without
a
wheels.
Snowboard in the sky.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, the Power Rangers movie. That movie's terrible. That movie's got to be so bad.
It's so bad. It's so bad. No, let's not even. No, that's never going to be. Well, maybe let's talk about it real. No, let's not talk about it. Ivan Ooze is the bad guy. There's no way you can have a villain named Ivan Ooze and have it be good.
Yeah, it doesn't sound very fun. Oh man, I totally forgot about all that. That's crazy.
I'm sorry
That's
I
so
brought
funny.
it back up to you.
Yeah, I might resent you for this at some point.
But okay, I'm glad you enjoyed the skydiving sequence. Full disclosure.
I do.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I do. I like it. The twist at the end that it wasn't him in the suit, I think works.
Yeah.
It kind of plays into the fact that like that so much is going on in this movie that it's like impossible for him to be everywhere that he needs to be. So he sends the Iron Man suit somewhere. Like it kind of, it does to me acknowledge kind of how busy and full of stuff this movie is.
Yeah.
But I think that it ultimately plays. I like that sequence a lot.
I think so.
And it is really, I think, bad pun, but like uplifting. And you like, the music swells and you like feel it when he like has all of them and they all kind of pull up at the water and he like drops everybody in. Like it works. I think it works.
That's a good moment to bring this up. Another thing that I really love about this movie is I think this is the best score of any Marvel film.
It's a good score.
I think Brian Tyler, especially the final march during the titles at the end, I've listened to that multiple times since watching the movie. Like it's a fun march, and it's really like, and it's almost like a Michael Giacchino score. It has this like fun like 60s like spy vibe to like that really brassy superhero like vibe. It's really cool. I think it's great.
Yeah, and it's weird, even as a musician, I am not somebody who really like takes note of score.
Mm-hmm.
Like I am deeply affected by score when it is used in movies, but like there are so many movies that I've seen a lot of that somebody would like play me a thing and I would not necessarily recognize it as, that movie's music, or, I love Michael Giacchino and his stuff on Lost, but like I could hear the main themes from Lost and I would know them. But there's like, so like I'm not always the person who's recognizing score. And when I watched this movie, I was like, the score in this movie kind of rips.
It's dope. No, I really enjoy. And Brian Tyler is definitely a guy.
Who is he?
Brian Tyler, I mean, as of recently, it's interesting. I know it's a little bit controversial to talk about Marilyn Manson now with kind of the recent allegations that have come out about him. But,
oh, sure. Yeah, that he's been, yeah.
Yeah, he's now, Brian Tyler is now apparently, I mean, in the last two albums, I think he was the producing partner with Marilyn Manson on those albums. And he's just a guy who's been in, he did the score for a movie we've talked about before called Six String Samurai, which I love the score for that movie. And he also did the score for a movie called Bubba Hotep, and I think his score with that movie is fantastic. I think he's great with just using scores that are more brass and guitar heavy. He really seems to have a strong suit like doing those kind of things. But yeah, I think his score is really great in this. He now, I think, is sort of more associated with, I'm like looking him up because I think he's done a bunch of movies, I want to say, with Marvel.
And he's done at least a few of the Fast and the Furious movies I'm seeing.
Okay.
He's worked in a lot of stuff. Wow. He's done a bunch of video games. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, he's not really talked about like in the same conversations, I guess, and maybe not deservedly so. He's not really brought up in like the conversations with like the Hans Zimmers or like the...
Sure, but this guy works.
But he is one of the probably hardest working, just like really in mainstream
Holy
cinema,
shit,
like in mainstream studio films. He's the guy you go to kind of, and I mean
Timeline.
Yeah, Timeline.
That's a stay tuned. We're doing Timeline at some point.
I mean, but we both enjoy that movie.
oh, I thought you didn't like Timeline.
No, wait a minute. What is wait a minute. I always confuse Timeline. Timeline is Paul Walker, right?
Yeah, Paul Walker.
Yeah, I enjoy
Gerard
Timeline.
Butler.
I enjoy
Timeline. Okay, damn it, that movie's great. He did every Fast and the Furious movie since Tokyo Drift. So I guess Justin Lin brought him in. So he's done a lot of those.
That makes a lot of sense. Wow. No, just looking through this, like it's a lot of movies that I've seen, and the score is definitely because I mean you don't really notice the score that much in like a Fast and the Furious movie because there's just so much noise kind of going on in the background that you can't really pay attention to the music. And I wonder if that's just why I don't, although remembering back to it, I do think his score for the 2017 Power Rangers remake is also a pretty decent superhero score. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's also not a bad movie.
No, that's not terrible.
That movie's not great. It's not great, but it's certainly could have been a lot worse.
It's certainly better than I expected for a Power Rangers movie.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, Brian Tyler's score in this, and just I would say this and Bubba Hotep are kind of my two like big scores for him. And actually, well, Six String Samurai as well. But that's a movie that, interestingly enough, he's probably the most famous person attached to that movie, which is saying something.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to still watch that movie and see if even me saying I dislike it is like even fair, or if it's just punching down at it.
Yeah, it's a very low budget, but it's a fun film.
But
so
yeah, he's good. Good for him.
Yeah. No, I mean, Brian Tyler is an amazing musician, and he writes some great scores. But in terms of Iron Man 3, that's kind of my final thoughts on it are just, it's a movie that I certainly don't apologize for in the sense that I think there's some moments that really just don't jive well in terms of tone. But I kind of think that's almost like a complaint one could say of all Marvel movies except a handful.
Easily could be, yeah.
Yeah, and I just feel like that the style that Shane Black is bringing in, sort of the sarcasm and the snarkiness, this movie has a lot of charm that I don't think I always saw present in other Marvel films. And I think that even though it's doing a very sort of like broad thematic kind of exploration in terms of like Tony's anxiety attacks and how that is ultimately just kind of resolved because he has a new thing to do. But I think that overall,
it really isn't resolved. I don't like.
Yeah, it's not. It's sort of just like solved. Yeah, that's kind of. It's just like, well, you're just gonna build some bombs and now you have your life purpose back again, so you're fine. And it's kind of just dropped. And it's too bad because I think that the film deals with it in an okay way that is a relatively interesting theme to explore. This idea of being traumatized by saving the world is something that I thought would have been fun for a movie to explore, and it definitely kind of just does a very broad sort of look at that. But I think it's a pretty good movie, and it's definitely it's honestly in a weird way I think the only Marvel film that I own on Blu-ray, because I just kind of feel comfortable going back to it.
I don't know if I own any.
Oh, you really? Interesting.
I don't know if I do.
I mean, they're so widely available now on Disney Plus. It's sort of like, what's the point? But I think I bought Iron Man 3 back in 2014 because I really liked it and I really enjoyed watching it. And I blew off the dust for this episode of the copy of my DVD because it's been several years. But it was fun to revisit it, and it's fun to sort of just be in the role that I think. Other than maybe the first Iron Man movie, I think, and you know what, I'll say more so than the first Iron Man movie, I think Robert Downey Jr. gets to play a lot in this movie, more so than any other Marvel movie, and I think that's kind of what is the thing that gets me through it the most, is he is just shining the entire time, and I'm just in awe of his charm and just everything he's saying every moment he's on screen.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that he's good. I think that, and maybe I also can't help but, when looking at the way that his character is developed, like this, this is such a period at the end of the sentence, the way this movie ends.
Yep.
And then there's just like, 3 more Avengers movies, 2 Spider-Man movies, and a Captain America movie where he has to have like all of these motivations and all of these things that just like feel disjointed and backslidey after the resolution of this movie.
Yeah. I agree.
And that this is a weird kind of fulcrum point in the storytelling that they're doing.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that the character never gets quite as much time to breathe as he does in Iron Man 3. And that's
ever again.
Yeah. And that's kind of the nice thing about it, but it's definitely a movie with a lot of faults and flaws, and I definitely am not shy about mentioning them because I think that...
But I guess most movies are. Yeah.
Of course. But I think that the faults are almost a part of the charm as well. So I kind of enjoy that to some degree. Like some of like what most people think of as the biggest faults, I think of as the most charming aspects, like the Mandarin twist.
Yeah, man, Kingsley, I don't know if we should really say, like, Ben Kingsley is hilarious in this movie. He really is good in this movie.
Ben Kingsley is so funny in this movie, and I mean, that character is a character that's it's a big moment in the film. He has like it's a performance that the film really rests on a lot. And you're right, he knocks it out of the park. It's probably, really honestly, and I feel sad saying this, but it's probably the last performance that I remember really loving of Ben Kingsley in my recent memory. Like I just feel like that
I don't know
one,
what he's done recently.
I mean, I know he was Bagheera in the Jungle Book, but that of course was a voice only role.
Fascinating.
But other than that,
John
I
Favreau.
really can't. I really just can't think of him. In I remember, I think he's the narrator of Noah.
Is he?
Yeah, and I think he was in. Oh, you know what? The one role I think I might remember him for before Iron Man 3. I think he's a doctor in Shutter Island. I think he plays one of the doctors in that movie.
And he's really good in that movie.
Really fantastic.
He's really good
in that movie.
Do you like Shutter Island?
It's been years since I've watched it. I feel like this might be a to be continued if you enjoy it, because I've only seen it once in theaters, and I kind of felt that the movie. It's interesting how I feel similar with that movie and Inception, where I feel like the director is kind of dropping the ball in not choosing an answer, and I guess that just might be a personal issue I have with it.
I think Shutter Island very much chooses a side way, way more than Inception does. Maybe that is a conversation for another time.
Maybe.
I really like Shutter Island.
I'll have to rewatch it.
I saw that movie 2 nights in a row at in theaters.
Oh wow, really? I feel
I was home for the weekend from college, and me and a couple friends from home saw it on Saturday night, and then I got back to campus on Sunday, and all of my friends were like, we're going to see Shutter Island. And I just happened to see it 2 nights in a row, and it made me love the movie.
You know what? Maybe that was my mistake, because I only saw it once, and maybe that's one of those movies that really deserved a second viewing. But I just remember, like, I was so aggravated with it after that first viewing that I didn't go back to it, but maybe I should go check it out again. So in talking about Ben Kingsley, I think we have to talk about the career of the other Oscar winner on this list, Gwyneth Paltrow.
Right, of course.
For Shakespeare in Love.
Which I like that movie. I don't know if that's I know that movie gets a lot of flack, and I don't know, in the conversation if it's like Oscar trajectory in relationship to like, what was Saving Private Ryan was the other big one that year. Like maybe Saving Private Ryan is a better movie, but I like Shakespeare in Love a whole lot.
Shakespeare in Love is a really charming movie. I actually have the screenplay too. Yeah. I own the screenplay because I think it's a great script. No, and I think she's great in it. She's charming in it. And I mean, Gwyneth Paltrow has been in great stuff. And I can't remember the first role that I saw her in, like in terms of chronologically, because I just think of her in things like Seven. I think of her in things like Great Expectations. I remember her in Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow, but at the same time, I didn't really love that movie, so I don't remember much of that movie. But that's like the early stuff that I've seen. I know in the last episode, or maybe the one before, I think it was the last episode, you mentioned The Talented Mr. Ripley, which I still need to see.
She's so good in The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Yeah. And also The Royal Tenenbaums. She's fantastic in The Royal Tenenbaums. Royal Tenenbaums is, for a while, was like my favorite movie. Is still probably in my top 5 or 10 of favorite movies. I love The Royal Tenenbaums. I come from like a weird family with a lot of baggage in a lot of ways, and I was charmed by that movie. And she's so good in that movie. She's like a really weird performance in Royal Tenenbaums. Yeah, I agree.
I also probably early on, I probably saw her in Shallow Hal,
yeah,
which
I was gonna say that's probably, in looking at the list,
a movie that ages really poorly.
A movie that ages poorly, and that actually, sadly, is probably also my first introduction to her in like mainstream film as a kid. Yeah, I was 10 when that came out. Or no, I was actually 12 when that came out. That came out in 2001. Wow, I thought that was 1999. Jeez, that's a 2001 movie.
Yeah, but she, Seven and The Talented Mr. Ripley are probably the 2 big early performances from her that I really latched onto.
Yep.
And and obviously Royal Tenenbaums. Why could I not find that?
Yeah. Royal Tenenbaums, and then more recently, other than the Marvel Universe, of course, Contagion. She's great in. Not in it for very long.
Yeah.
But from what I remember, well, I mean, she might
be a cool
be.
little performance.
What'd you say?
It's a cool little performance.
It is. It's a shocking.
Really, like, willing to be unlikable.
Yeah. And it's a shocking sort of just fate for that character too. In terms of that movie is a very that movie's great, but God, that movie, I haven't gone back and watched that movie either because it's hard to watch. But that's a great one.
Yeah. I don't know. Also, I mean, I guess it goes without saying also that like her what's it called? Her like extra, her public life outside of film with like Goop and her like weird show on Netflix and stuff, like Gwyneth Paltrow is weird as fuck. Like there's no denying that. But like I also feel like she's like was like married to the guy from Coldplay, or I don't know if she still is, but like
sure, yeah.
I just feel like their ability to understand maybe what like the real world is just evaporated. And like maybe I don't even blame them for it.
I mean, I think that's true, but I think that unfortunately for a lot of probably celebrities, especially actors, I mean, I think that probably happens to a lot of them. And they do sort of live in this fantasy world, so why wouldn't it happen to them that they kind of have these, like...
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, that kind of just happens.
It kind of just happens. Like, you're just living in a world of pretend all the time. It's kind of... It's kind of understandable and sort of just like, I don't know, like, it's not like you feel bad for them, but at the same time, it's like, on some level, it's like, well, I understand... I don't even know where I'm going with this anymore. I'm going off on a tangent. I understand kind of the emotional, just sort of like turmoil that I think that life could probably have. And that...
Or just imbalance.
Imbalance is the better word. Yeah, imbalance is more the word. And I feel like what she does with those, the moonstones and kind of the different sort of things that she believes in, there are a lot of people that believe in that too, with her. And even though it's well, I mean, it's very fruthy, and I don't like the fact that she's like taking people's money sometimes for those kind of things. But at the same time, like, I don't know, if it's something you believe in, I guess it's okay. I don't know.
Right?
But it's
just you could talk yourself in circles for hours over this shit. Like, just like,
it's true.
It's like, what is this moral? Is this like real? Like, like, what the fuck am I looking at?
So in the bizarre world of actors and their lives, I think it's time for some Kevin Bacon game.
Right, we should play the Kevin Bacon game.
So I'm going to attempt to explain this game because I always throw this off to Isaac. Let me see if I can try to explain it. The Kevin Bacon
Chris,
game...
what's the Kevin Bacon game?
The Kevin Bacon game is the game that basically says that all actors are, through... what would you say, indirect ways in the movies that they star in, connected through Kevin Bacon. So you can take any actor and go through their films and other actors they've worked with and eventually get your way back to Kevin Bacon. And we've kind of interpreted this game to be that for every episode, we're going to play the Kevin Bacon game basically with two different actors from the present episode and the previous episode that came before. So we're just going to pick two random actors, one from last episode, which was Ocean's 12, and today's episode, which is Iron Man 3, and we're going to connect them in the spirit of the Kevin Bacon game. Is that a decent way of explaining it?
We're going to pick, we're each going to pick an actor from each of the movies and have the other person connect those two actors.
Nailed it. All right, I got it. I feel like I gave you a challenge first last week. I wrote up two for you this week just in case I picked one that you picked for me, so I wanted to be sure I had options.
Okay. I feel like both the ones that I picked are maybe hard.
Oh, Jesus. Sorry, Lord.
But I think, I don't know, there's an easy way out from one of the characters. So yeah, I'm going to ask you to connect this week's star, Rebecca Hall, to last week's star, Julia Roberts.
Okay. Rebecca Hall to Julia Roberts. I'm going to attempt to not use other Ocean's films or other Marvel films. Let's see if I can do that.
Hell yeah.
So Rebecca Hall, let's think of her career. She was in the things I think of her in is like Vicky Cristina Barcelona. Oh, she was also in The Prestige. So Rebecca Hall was in Prestige with someone who's going to eventually get me to Julia Roberts. ScarJo would just get me back to Marvel. Christian Bale might get me eventually to Julia Roberts. Hugh Jackman doesn't seem like he would. Michael Caine. Let me try Christian Bale, I guess. So Rebecca Hall was in Prestige with Christian Bale. I feel like there's probably someone I'm missing here. And now, how can I get from Christian Bale to Julia Roberts? Let me think.
I can get you from Christian Bale to Julia Roberts.
Oh, darn me. In one
Think an
move?
obvious Christian Bale. Yeah, an obvious Christian Bale co-star.
Okay, give me a minute. I need to think of more Julia Roberts movies. Christian Bale co-star. Oh, man. I thought I was getting better at this.
Okay, think about it. It's a male. It's Julia's male co-lead in. I don't know how to describe it.
Oh my God. Okay, I got this. Give me 1 sec. I have to write it out. Oh, this is a difficult game. So Rebecca Hall was in The Prestige with Christian Bale, who's in The Dark Knight with Aaron. I almost said Aaron Neville. Aaron Eckhart, who is in Aaron Eckhart, who's in Aaron Brockovich with Julia Roberts.
Nice.
Oh God! Thanks for your help with that one. All right, so I guess that's not entirely my point, but we're not even keeping.
No. That's I like the assists.
So I compiled 2 for you.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Let me just make sure this is okay. Good. And you definitely didn't give me either of these 2, and I definitely have one that I think is an easy one, and I have one that I think is a hard one. So I will, since that one was a little.
Give me the hard one. Embarrass me.
I'm gonna give you the hard one. Oh fuck! I can't. Never mind. Oh wait a minute. No, I can't. Never mind. I just realized my hard one had Julia Roberts in it as well. See, this is a good thing. It's a good thing that I made it back up. All right, you get an easy one. You ready for the easiest shit?
Sure.
I want you to get Jon Favreau to George Clooney.
Jon Favreau to George Clooney. Can't do TV shows, even though they've both guest starred on the same TV show.
Yeah,
but
let's not do that.
Favreau to Clooney. What would be the easiest way to do that?
I can do it in one.
Okay, you can do it in one. There's somebody who they have both worked with. They've both worked with a con, either James or Scott, but that's not it. A one jump. You're saying Jon Favreau to Clooney.
They have one. Yeah, one. They have an actor in common.
Is it from a project that Favreau directed?
No.
No. Okay. But it's like outside of the Marvel movies.
Outside Marvel movies.
I wonder if I feel like Chef has like a lot of like co-stars or like cameos and shit. But I don't know who's in Chef. He's also in Elf, which gives you people like Mary Steenburgen or James Caan, as I said. Jon Favreau, one jump to George Clooney. Has George Clooney's never done a movie with Woody Harrelson. Damn, dude.
Do you want me to give you? I'll give you another hint. I'll give you a hint.
Okay, give me a hint.
So it is a. What's a hint without? I'm trying to give you a hint that doesn't give this away. George Clooney. Well, this is just giving it away, but it's okay. George Clooney directed the film. George Clooney is the director of the film.
Huh. Okay, he's directed a couple movies, and they're all like bad. So has Favreau been in a movie? Has Favreau been in a movie with someone from the Monuments Men?
No, I don't think so.
No,
I didn't go that route. I went a different route.
what are Clooney? Did Clooney direct Leatherheads? Clooney directed
I think he did.
maybe Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. Well, but like Favreau, I was gonna say like I can do Rockwell, but that's through Iron Man 2.
I didn't do that. You want me to?
Okay.
All right. You want me to give you the answer?
Give me another clue. I'm getting pathetic.
The person who is the actor in common between these two is also in Iron Man 3.
Oh, jeez. So it's a person who they've both co-starred with, who he was with in a different movie than Iron Man 3.
Yep. Who George Clooney was with in a different.
Who's in? What the hell? Is George Clooney in a movie with Guy Pearce, or not Don Cheadle?
No. Maybe it's 2 jumps to be technical. Do you want me to give you the answer?
I feel like I should say yes, but I want to say no. Jon Favreau as an actor.
It is 1 jump. I'm just
weird career as an actor.
Oh, actually, oh my God, I didn't even think about this, but so the actor that is in common to both George Clooney and Jon Favreau is actually in common in the sense that he was in 2 movies that are directed by both. So this actor was in a movie directed by George Clooney, and he was also in a movie directed by Jon Favreau.
What the fuck? Dude, I have no idea. I'm so confused.
It is the man, the myth, the legend himself, RDJ. Robert Downey Jr. was in Chef with Jon Favreau, and Robert Downey Jr. was also in Good Night and Good Luck with George Clooney.
Oh, man, Good Night and Good Luck.
Yep.
Wow. I hadn't even thought of
the most
David Strathairn, baby.
David Strathairn. A movie of great performances, but my God, one of the most boring films I have ever seen.
Kind of dull. Strathairn is, he's so good.
He's so good. Yeah, it's great performances, but man, it is just not. I think it's the droning nature of the voices too in it that movie just puts me straight to sleep. Like anytime I watch it, but it's an interesting film. I attempted to watch Good Night and Good Luck in theaters. I struggled staying awake for that movie.
Yeah, it's not great, but I think that I just love Strathairn so much. I could just watch him for hours.
So I'm glad I was able to. I kind of got you on that one.
Man, I was totally stumped there. I couldn't figure that. Robert Downey Jr. existing outside of the Marvel universe is just so weird for me. But like a fucking course he was in Chef.
Yep.
Ugh. I don't even know why that's my response, but
I'm just I mean, did you ever see Good Night and Good Luck? I'm just curious if you even had that reference in your mind.
I saw it a while ago. Okay. I saw it like when it came out.
Okay.
Like my dad was interested in it.
Okay, cool.
Oh man.
So Isaac, I have a question for you this week.
Yeah?
I have a very important
What's up,
question. This week, what do you love?
You know what I love? Do you know the band Pup?
No, Pup as in like puppy?
P-U-P.
Okay.
Pup.
No idea.
They're like they're like a punk band, but they're like they have like really good hooks, but they're like very fuzzy, pretty heavy, pretty kind of like aggressive, but really good melodies and great guitar leads, and everything is like really up tempo, or most of it's really up tempo and a lot of fucking fun. And they're just they're like this Canadian band that they have like 3 full albums and like 1 or 2 EPs, and they're just so good. And I've been listening to I've been a big fan of theirs for like a year or 2, but just like the past week I've fallen back into springtime, kind of in my car being able to put on some Pup, and man, they just fucking kill. They have this album. It's I think it's probably their most accessible record. Their first album is like it's like pretty like post-punky, like it hits pretty hard. I think their most accessible album is called Morbid Stuff. It's their most recent full-length album. And it's just like, oh man, it just really, so many good grooves. All the guitar leads are so much fun. Like everything, there's like a lot of gang vocals. It's all really like like anthemic, like not like Imagine Dragons anthem, but like just like a lot of people kind of yelling and shouting and having a lot of fun.
Cool.
Like everybody in the band is a vocalist.
Cool.
And they just kill, man. They just kill. Like they don't have a song I dislike.
That's awesome. Well, they haven't. I'm looking at their Wikipedia.
They
They've only released 3 albums. It's Morbid Stuff, The Dream Is Over, and then Pup. It looks like, unless they have a few EPs.
It's self-titled.
Too. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. No, even more so than it's weird because I honestly want to say that I have a deeper love for music almost than I do for film, because it's something that I don't understand in the slightest, whereas film is something that I do kind of tell myself that I understand to some degree. But music,
seeing how the sausage is made, as we say.
Yeah, I don't understand the creative process of what it takes to create music. So when it moves me, it's all the more just like exciting and just powerful. And I even more so than movie suggestions.
Nice.
Whenever someone gives me a music suggestion, even when it's something like, I remember someone once suggested that I go and check out Fish, and I am not a big Fish fan, but I'll go and I'll check them out and I'll listen to a bunch of their stuff because I love listening to new music. So I'm definitely going to check these. And punk is definitely up my alley as a genre that I love, emo punk especially. So I'll check this out.
And I would recommend Pup to anyone. Like, they've got really great, just all of it. It just kills. I would just be repeating myself at this point, but I would recommend them to anyone, and they're really good.
How long have you been listening to them?
I'd say probably about like a year and a half.
Okay, cool.
And this album, The Dream Is Over, this album, Morbid Stuff, is like a really good like spring summer album. Their previous album, The Dream Is Over, is like a really good winter album.
Okay, cool. Interesting. Your albums work seasonally, I see.
Well, not all, but some of them do, and sometimes it's easier to differentiate that way.
Fair point.
Someday, any listeners ask me about my views on all the Motion City soundtrack albums. But yeah, like, Pop. I'd recommend Pop to anybody, and they're like a lot, and there's a lot of noise, but there's just so much to it, and they just really. You can just hear people really giving everything they have, and it's just so good. It's so good. I love Pop.
I was going to say, like, just one last thing, like that statement you said, there's a lot of noise. Some of my favorite musicians and bands are, it's like noise metal or like noise pump or noise punk and stuff like that. It's like just, do you mean like sort of just distortion along with kind of like the noises, the chords they're playing?
Yeah, and that exactly.
Cool.
And they'll really kind of let things fuzz out, and like they're they'll do like fun dissonant chords and stuff, and they just kind of they all make the most of their instruments and everything that they're doing. Cool. Like, it's a lot of fun.
Cool. Very nice. Very nice.
And if you can watch videos of them on like YouTube playing live, it's all the better. Watching them play live is so much fun.
I'm gonna look them up. I looked up their Wikipedia page.
So, yeah.
I'm gonna YouTube them.
Yeah, it's great. But hey, I was actually wondering, Chris.
Yeah, Isaac.
Hey, you. What do you love?
So, Isaac, this week I really love something, I guess, kind of similar to what you love. But I love especially vintage stores in California, and specifically a vintage store that I went to recently in Santa Paula, California. I'll go to these places once every probably couple of months and just find them, because inadvertently they always have a vinyl section, and I just go through the vinyl section and find anything that's interesting. And usually I don't find anything, but recently when I went to this, I wish I wrote down the name, but it was a vintage store in Santa Paula, and I got a Harry Belafonte vinyl record, who is famous for like Jumpin' the Line and the Deo song from Beetlejuice. That's kind of like his two most famous songs. It's called Belafonte Returns to Carnegie Hall, and he also features 2 amazing female artists that I love, and it was so just like amazing to know that Harry Belafonte collaborated with them. One is Miriam Makeba, who's an amazing South African, I believe the genre is Marabi. That's the type of music she does, and she's an amazing artist. Cool. And then Odetta, who is an African-American folk, sort of like blues artist. Both Miriam Makeba and Odetta are from their heyday was probably like the 60s and the 70s, but I still think their music is really great. And then I also bought another vinyl completely in the opposite end of the spectrum. I bought a Randy Newman record called 12 Songs.
Oh.
I'm kind of really in a weird way into a lot of Randy Newman's early stuff. I think it's really interesting.
Randy Newman had some like weird, like cuttingly satirical shit, like stuff that like,
Yep.
you know, that if people wanted to call quote unquote problematic, but it's so obviously and only satirical that it's like, I don't even think it would be considered problematic. I mean, I'm sure some people could, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, it's like he is so blatantly obvious in like who he is mimicking and mocking in some of the things that he writes. It's fucking crazy.
And sometimes he's mocking some of the most terrible people, so he says some terrible shit, but it's because he's portraying these characters. But recently, his most recent album, Dark Matter, there's a song on there called Putin, and it's like it basically, it just, I don't want to give away, it's because it's definitely not a sympathetic look at Putin, but it's almost like telling Putin's story from his perspective. And so he talks about like
that's funny,
putting his pants on like one leg at a time, like he's just like us, and he has his Putin cheerleaders, but Putin hates them because he hates vulgarity. It's just like just like all these
that's really good,
amazing things. And yeah, just great music. I always find great vinyls at these vintage stores, but also just great.
Where did you say this vintage store was?
Santa Paula. Santa Paula is the town in California. Paula, Paula, or Paula. Oh, Santa Paula, I believe is how it's pronounced in California. Really amazing place. Just kind of like, we sort of just were just walking on the main street, and I think stopped at like 2 or 3 vintage stores and found one that had those 2 records. But I found great things at those stores. I actually have a Man-Bat action figure from the Batman animated series that I still haven't opened.
Oh, cool.
But it's fucking, it looks dope. I need to open it someday. And its wingspan is like 3 feet. It's fucking awesome.
The only action figures that I own are beat up old Transformers that I played with as a child that I still hold dear to myself. I have not bought an action figure or a toy in quite some time.
I have only 2, I think, and I have like a Dark Knight sort of like Christian Bale as Batman action figure, and I have that Man-Bat action figure. But that's kind of it.
Man-Bat.
You know, man, I hope they do a Man-Bat movie someday. I'd love to see Man-Bat in a feature film.
They'll get there at some point. They will bleed this shit dry.
They will. But I think that about does it for this.
I think that's our episode.
Please like, subscribe, comment, follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
Absolutely.
At Pick Your Take.
Email us. We'll have our email. We're always open to any sort of communication or reaching out. Just don't be like an asshole. You can disagree, just don't be an asshole.
Yeah. And if you do, we just won't respond to you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so it actually won't make much of a difference, I guess. Special thanks to Sean Regan for our artwork and Dude Robots for our music.
And once again, special thanks to the filmmakers who give us material to use
of course,
for
absolutely.
our podcast.
And to all the listeners.
And to all the listeners, thank you. And thank you, Isaac.
Oh, and thank you, Chris. All right, well, have a good one.
All right, man. See you.